functions in practice, and to understand how the relevant laws are being implemented and enforced on the ground. In particular, we will be focusing on enforcement arrangements under the Dogs Law 1961, both the current and proposed animal welfare laws and the policing of beaches, parks and roads regulations. This hearing will help the panel build a clearer picture of how the framework operates in practice, the challenges faced by those enforcing it, and whether improvements may be needed to support consistent and effective enforcement across the island. I think I would like to draw attention to the following: that the hearing will be filmed and streamed live, and the recording and transcript will be published afterwards on the States Assembly website. And we start with introductions. My name is Deputy Hilary Jearn. I'm the Chair of the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel.
I'm Deputy Alex Curtis, a panel member.
I'm Deputy David Wall, panel member.
Constable David Johnson, panel member.
Joanne Kamara, Chef de Police, Parish St Peter, and Chairman of the Comité Chef.
Hi, good afternoon. Craig Jackson, Chief Inspector, States Jersey Police.
Good afternoon, Michelle Boujard. I'm Chef de Police of St Bernard's and also Vice Chair of the Comité de Chef.
Thank you. And many of the questions we have today, I know we can address both roles in the sense because we have you both roles here today. So thank you very much for coming. So CI and Chairman, in relation to the control of animals in public spaces, please can you briefly set out your respective statutory roles in enforcing the Dogs Law and the policing of beaches, parks and roads regulations? Maybe we'd like to start.
Obviously beaches, I'll start off with that because there are, as you know, between certain times that members of the public who do have dogs are allowed to walk their dogs on the beach without a lead. The parks, again, they have to be on the lead. The main issues we have there is obviously dog fouling and the others on roads. Again, it's the same as parks on the lead, and they don't necessarily have to be on the lead as long as they're not out of control.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I think the main responsibility and statutory responsibility of the States Jersey Police is to investigate crime. And as we know from the beginning of 2025, dogs that are dangerously out of control effectively is a criminal offence. Fortunately, the numbers of dogs that are dangerously out of control are low. Approximately, we had about last year 124 incidents relating to dogs that are dangerously out of control, and effectively 44 of those became a criminal investigation. And that's really our statutory responsibility to investigate that criminal activity.
Okay, so because of the policing of beaches, parks and roads regulations, there's not so much that criminal aspect within that. That doesn't necessarily fall under what you were saying about that involving crime.
Correct. We still have an investigatory power if it's reported to the States of Jersey Police, but generally those incidents under the roads, parks and beaches, I think, are generally reported at first port of call to the parish, to the centenniers or the chefs of that parish, and they effectively deal with those incidents effectively and efficiently.
And now, of course, this review is not only looking at that, but also the new animal welfare law, the draft that's there. And we talked with the Minister and the State's Vet this morning about a number of offences that will be put under the draft, and that there is the offences have become stronger than that's currently. So could you, again, kind of briefly set out your respective statutory roles in the this draft animal welfare law that you see that is the change maybe from the current law, and where you see your roles in this potential draft law?
Excuse me. As Chief Inspector Jackson stated, we do get a lot of calls in relation to dogs and livestock. When it comes to welfare, we would normally send to the State's Vet because unless it's something quite obvious, we are not really cognizant of what a State Vet would decide is good or bad husbandry. So when it comes to offences, again, Chief Inspector Jackson's correct, we'll get the call, but as we are honorary police, we are not an investigative service, so we would then forward on any complaints or get the members of the public to contact State Jersey Police, so NTV can be done at the pace.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So fortunately, the numbers currently are relatively low with regards to animal welfare, and they're vast ranging. You know, the classification of animal welfare could be a loose horse, loose cattle. Like I say, we had just shy of 300 animal welfare logs or incidents last year. And effectively 46% of those related to dogs that are dangerously out of control. So when you remove that criminal sort of investigation out of it, the numbers are low. However, as we've alluded in the submission, it's not necessarily the demand on our service, it's the capability and capacity with other laws and regulation changes that is causing an increased demand on the states of Jersey Police and resourcing. But saying that, the change in bespoke the welfare animal legislation, we think will be low impact and low demand.
That's good, and I suppose that leads on to my next question about your general views of the animal welfare and control in Jersey, and you're saying that you feel that there'll still be a low impact. Do you want to add anything before we move on in that aspect on your overall, looking at not only the current laws on around control, especially in the ones that we've talked about already, but also the new animal welfare law, and if there's anything extra to put in apart from your submission?
No, thank you, Chair. I think the main important priority is the increased powers for inspectors with regard to animal inspectors, which gives them the increased power for potentially dogs in hot cars, albeit low demand in the summer, fortunately, for the police service. It would be an extra pressure, but it gives them the extra role and responsibility. So, as I've already alluded to in the submission, I think it's important for the public to know the right agency to call at the right time. The States of Jersey Police and the Honourable Police may not be the right agency to call for animal welfare. It could be the JSPCA or the State's Vet. So I think there does need to be clear, concise guidance for the member of the public should this go ahead, so that they are aware who to call at the first port of call.
Yeah, just a quick question. A trend. What we were sort of told this morning, there are over 10,000 dog owners in the island. Are you seeing a trend, an increasing trend over the last, say, 3 years because of greater dog ownership? I don't know who would like to answer that question.
The only thing I would say is dog ownership and control of dogs isn't really the remit of the Honourable Police. There is obviously Poodle, which is the system that the parishes use to note who the registered keepers are. The only time we would get involved with Poodle is if, as Chief Inspector Jackson said, if a dog was dangerously out of control, and then we would have the powers to then look into Poodle. But apart from that, as I say, it's not the remit of the Honourable Police to actually look into owners of dogs.
I think you're right, Deputy. There has been seen a natural, steady increase in dog-related incidents, and I think probably, interesting to say, since COVID, since the lockdown effect here. And interesting enough, last year was the highest demand with regards to 124 incidents, which jumped up about 20 incidents from the previous year with regards to members of the public reporting dog incidents. But like I said, about a third of those convert into a criminal investigation, and then approximately a third of that third are generally prosecuted, whether it's via parish hall inquiry or at the magistrates court, and they can obviously invoke some powers of extra control measures with regards to that dog.
Yeah, to clarify on the numbers you gave earlier, are those the incidents which come to your attention as States of Police officer? I'm just wondering, do they therefore include matters which dealt with at parish level? Probably not.
No, I think you're correct, Constable. It's with regards to the numbers that come through a report incident through the Emergency Service Combined Control Room. Right. If we allocate an on-duty officer who's out on patrol, they'd be incorporated in those numbers, but a direct contact to the centre or the parish may not be incorporated in those numbers.
So leading on from that, I mean, is there a collation of parish incidents so we know the full picture?
No, I mean, we do get a lot of calls in relation to neighbours calling about a dog continually barking being left in the house, but that's not an offence. So as such, there's no real need to actually take note of it unless it's a continuous problem.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. I mean, but if it goes to parish hall inquiry, for instance,
yes,
is there a collation of incidents which go to parish hall inquiry in each parish? So you've got an overall total?
Yes.
If it goes to a parish hall inquiry, it would have gone, first of all, through CJD, which is State Police. And
okay, so it's
so they will have a log of it.
Okay,
so
yes.
I'm sure the figures
if they've come to parish hall inquiry, And then, as Senator Bushard said, the paperwork comes to us via CJD, and then once the parish inquiry is concluded, we then send it back to CJD, and they collate all the evidence and all the numbers.
Okay, thank you.
So just to clarify, you don't see a gap in the reporting to ensure that that we're collecting that right data. We know that there's that what you're saying is the kind of collective picture of what's happening. So we know kind of we can really see whether the laws are as the right laws kind of thing in that sense.
I think we have to just, Chair, if I may, sort of section out reporting versus prosecution. So any incidents that come through the combined control room will be logged under the States of Jersey Police data. If an individual directly calls a centennial in a parish, they may be out of that data. But as the Centennier and Centennier Kamara have alluded to, any prosecutions will come to the central repository of the Criminal Justice Department, and then necessary paper will go out for the prosecution. And we've got the central repository for convictions or any no further actions as well. So I'm comfortable in the prosecutions. We'll have an ironed approach, but the incidents, there may be a gap in the data there.
Reporting.
I think certainly from my parish, anything that would come via a centennier, we do log it anyway, but if it's a very minor thing like a horse loose or something like that, that wouldn't be taken up with States Police. We deal with it ourselves.
Of course.
Dogs left in cars, sometime on a sunny day, sometimes we'd deal with it without mentioning it. But otherwise, if it's anything of any seriousness, we would log it with the
Yes,
States Police.
but of course we've got the extra now of the new draft animal welfare, which kind of puts more meat into those areas that you've actually talked about, where it becomes something that is more than maybe in the past it was seen as important extra. It's actually, there are offences around those areas now that you've mentioned. So it was just trying to see if those reporting, how it all centralises and whether it flows through to that prosecution.
I think realistically, though, things like animals loose and the like, if it's a one-off, it probably doesn't get passed on. But it's when a farmer or something is doing it on a regular basis, yes, it does need to be addressed.
Thank you. And you talked mainly that the incidences that you see, 46% is really dog-related. What is the other kind of common animal-related incidences? Is it mainly straying of livestock as kind of like the next one?
It is. I mean, as you're aware, farmers with livestock won't necessarily have that livestock in their parish or in their fields, because farmers do lease out their fields to other farmers. So in the majority of our cases will be loose horses, loose cows. They're not a major inconvenience, but obviously there's potential danger to the public if a car hits the cow. But I would say one thing, that farmers are very, very good. They normally come out almost immediately and corral their livestock back into the fields.
I see. And we were talking this morning with the States Vet about in the draft law about the different kinds of inspectors. You've got the veterinary inspectors, but you've also got the inspectors, which involves yourselves. How is the kind of the incidences where they overlap? Do you see that working well at the moment, where maybe you'll attend something and then we'll phone the States Vet to take over, or the other way around? Is that done in a natural fashion already, or do you see that being increased maybe in working together?
I would say in the 10 years or 11 years I've been in the honorary, I don't think I've had occasion to call the States Vet once. What I have found is normally a lot of people in the parish who are farmers or whatever know if they have a worry about an animal that doesn't belong to them, they normally call the States Vet direct. And so we hardly ever get called ourselves, because they know which agency to call.
Understand. And were there any incidences where you felt that you couldn't act due to the limitations of powers of jurisdiction in the kind of laws that we've been talking about? Is there anywhere you felt that you couldn't act?
To my knowledge, no.
Same.
in the same?
Yes, no, I don't think there's any gaps in the current legislation. However, just previously going back, Chair, if I may, I think it's important that the police, let's say as an investigative body, may not necessarily be the right body to investigate animal welfare incidents. And I think with the new powers and legislations that the state's vet and inspectorates there may need to take on the investigation with advice. Like I said, I think it works really well in partnership. We communicate with the state's vets on numerous occasions. They're the professionals with regards to animal welfare, and we'll take an advice and guidance on them. And certainly, if it's a different sort of animal welfare case.
No, thank you. And I think that is that connection. And as the laws change and adapt, that working together in partnership is something key. And it's definitely States Vet mentioned that this morning. And what role does public education and awareness play in preventing this animal control concerns or behavioural offences? And do you believe that we would need more public education and communication?
I think this is key because we do get a wide and varied number of incidents, weird and wonderful incidents called into the combined control room. It doesn't necessarily require a police deployment, but it may require another agency being deployed. Just out of incident, we may have a deceased animal on the beach, etc. No role for the police investigation there, but however, it may be JSPCA or the state's vet, etc., to go on to ascertain the cause of death, etc. So I think it is key for education for the public to know who is the right agency to call, because it does put an increased demand on the States of Jersey Police, even taking that call and signposting it to the right agency. So I think there will need to be some education and clarity for the public.
And I think the other side of that is that the agencies should be available, not Monday till Friday, 9 till 5, it should be contactable at all times.
Do you feel that they are at the moment, or that doesn't necessarily?
I think most of the agencies that I've come across, it's not state agencies, should we say, it's not necessarily State's Vet or anything like that, because I can't say I've had the occasion to call them, but I think the problem that you've got is like environmental health, for instance. People have issues with parties and the like. The Environmental Health Department works 9 till 5, Monday to Friday. So our powers are pretty limited as to what we can do without environmental health. And it's just, my concern would be that we'd be in the same boat.
Good point. It's a good point, and something that we've talking as a panel about this public education and awareness, and especially when we've been looking in the policing of parks and beaches regulations, that whether that you believe that not only that, but that signage could be improved, or there is enough signage but people just don't read the signage. You know, do you feel that that would help people to comply with what is currently in the law, so it wouldn't end up they make offences where they didn't know that they were?
I think signage could definitely be improved, and I think that there should also be consideration given on the parks, because some parks you can have a dog off its lead, and others you've got to have it on a lead. Classic example is the railway walk. You don't need to have a dog on a lead, and yet the sports centre you do. You can't really police it too much, because if you see somebody's dog on the sports centre, 9 times out of 10 they'll say, "Oh, sorry, we were on the railway walk and he ran off." So I think that needs to be focused on a little bit, but other than that...
Thank you. And I suppose my last question is, and we've talked a little bit about it already, but do you believe there is clear protocol who takes the lead to enforcement when those reports are received? So I know, Chief Inspector, you talked about that often it comes into the control room, but of course if we increase public awareness and people are more aware, do we feel that there is that who knows who should take the lead?
I don't think it is that clear and concise. I think there does need to be some protocols and clear and concise messaging for the public. That said, we can't put memorandums of understanding in for everything, and it's art of communication and talking to key partners. And if we get a control room call, we will allocate it to the right agency to deal with. And like I say, it is about talking. As the Centenniers have alluded to, that agency may not be on 24/7 call out, and we will have to deal with the immediacy and making sure that the welfare of the animal and safeguards in place, and then deal with the right agency when they're next on duty. But I do think there does need to be clear protocols and guidelines on who to call. I think the default setting, public may think it's the police, but as I've already alluded to, the police aren't necessarily the right agency, and the changes and regulations across the island have increased demand on the services.
And taking that to the kind of the next step, is it clear the protocols on who is the lead organisations in the different aspects of the regulation? If once it's been reported, do you feel that the protocols are there? People, the organisations and different elements of the institutions feel that they are taking that responsibility to.
The Chair, I don't think they are, and I think there would be a natural expectation that the police, and when I say police, politically across the board with honoraries as well, to deal with the investigation. And I've said that is probably one of the risks with the change in the law, that actually the police, with the capacity and demand, may not have the capacity to deal with those, or will not have the capacity, and other agencies will have to step into that space. And I don't think the investigations should naturally fall to police to investigate.
Thank you.
I agree with that. I would say that if there is an instance of an animal, the first point of call from a parishioner would be to call the honorary police. It's just a standard thing. And as Chief Inspector Jackson said, we might necessarily be the right person, but we're more than happy to pass it on to JSPCA or whoever. But I'd say invariably we are the first point of call.
Yes, of course. And you feel that at the moment, when you're passing it on, you feel that the people you're passing it on, the organisation you're passing it on to, understands their responsibilities within that.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Purser.
Okay, just a couple of questions now on the clarity of the legislation and regulations that yourself and officers follow. As enforcement bodies for the dogs law, the policing of beaches, the parks and roads regulations, and the last and now new animal welfare laws, how clear is the breadth of legislation for yourselves and officers in actually interpreting kind of what you're responsible for and then applying it in practice? Maybe Chair first and then Chief Inspector.
I still think there's work to be done. I think it's a good starting point, but I think the definition of who actually is in charge or not does need to be people aren't cognizant properly of who's actually the lead. I don't think. It just needs a little bit of tweaking.
I think legislation is there, Deputy, and I think it's well regulated, as you've already called out there in the question. We've got roads, parks and beaches, the animal welfare legislation, the dogs law as well. So encompassing all the laws together, I think we have a wide-ranging number of incidents and legislation, and depending where they happen in the incidents, we'll pick out which piece of legislation best fits that incident to be investigated. So I think the legislation is there, but again, as the Chair alluded to, it depends on who's the right agency or the lead agency to pick that investigation up. Fortunately, as I've already said, the number of incidents within the island are relatively low, and I think the public do a very good job in looking after their animals, and when an incident does occur, the agencies get together in a partnership, a collaborative approach to actually deal with that incident.
Okay, so ownership, whether organisation or which even group of police officers kind of might then triage it, is part of it. But are there any other sections in, because as you say, it's well regulated in the sense that there's a lot of regulation and a lot of law, but is it kind of clear for those who execute against it, not just who owns it, but then how to follow it, I guess? Or do you think they're all pretty well bedded in, the previous laws, and they're all pretty well understood?
I think they are very well bedded in, but certainly from the States of Jersey Police perspective, any new law legislation that comes through is a role responsibility for our Learning and Development Department to embed that organisationally with the officers, certainly the frontline response officers, to make sure, one, they're aware of the change in legislation, and two, how to deal with it. Investigations generally follow the same process. You collate the evidence, you see what evidence you've got, and you see if you've got the evidential threshold for prosecution. So, but actually understanding the new legislation, that's the role responsibility of our Learning and Development Department.
Okay. One area, the Vice Chair, what the committee just mentioned that is somewhat unclear is, or perhaps is sometimes struggling to implement, is that of kind of understanding designation of parks under the policing of parks legislation. To what extent do you see that confusion play out genuinely with members of the public, and how does that affect your ability to then enforce the various parts of legislation around zoning? And you gave the example of the railway walk and Lekeneve.
I think in most cases, I think it's just words of advice that you have to give people. You know, we're not talking about major incidents usually on dogs being in the wrong place. So you can give words of advice and just leave it at that. Do tend to take details of the people and have it noted so that they, if they do, get words of advice every week, for instance, it would be clear. But other than that, I don't think it's too major.
Is it clear to be able to communicate which parks have what, you know, under the law when somebody if somebody's, you know, walking, you know, without a dog in Lekeneve, is it clear that you can point them to basically educate them from your side before it escalates?
I think signage throughout the island is very poor.
Yeah.
I say it's poor. We have signs. However, usually if you have a sign which says no dogs allowed, it's also included amongst another 15 different things that aren't allowed, so people don't see it. They don't bother reading it. The Keneve Sports Centre, to their credit, recently put in a load of signs up there, very big ones, saying no dogs unless on leads. And that I've actually noticed that has had a bit of an impact.
Okay.
Can I just maybe come back to the point you were talking about the training and needing to embed that? I was just wondering from an honorary perspective, do you do that same? Do you take that as well, that you have a training to embed new law within the honoraries as well?
Yes, so when it's implemented, the Law Office Department send out or post it on the government webpage, and then the Secretary, Jane Bertram, of the Comité de Chef, will then send it to all the centenaires. And so we do get the laws, and then hopefully then the centenaires, it goes down and disseminated to their officers. So yes, but in reality we don't, as it was alluded to, we don't have that many. I mean, if we have 10,000 dogs and only have 100 incidents, that's only 1%. So it's a very, very low number. So we don't have that many instances, but it is disseminated from the committee, from the secretary from the Comité de Chef de Police. Is
that the law itself, or does the Comité de Chef de Police prepare any kind of guidance as to how to interpret that for those who are more at the coalface, shall I say?
Sure. Well, there's a meeting once a month for the Committee of the Chefs, and we discuss any new laws that are implemented. And in those meetings, it's all the different chefs then have an input, and from that, we certainly look to learn from each other, and they then again spread it down the line.
Okay.
And I might add, if it's something that's overly complicated, or we think it's going to be overly complicated, we would ask our states colleagues whether they could provide us with a.
And is that I presume from a learning hub side within the State of Jersey Police, you're preparing some kind of working practices codes kind of for officers to follow on the ground. Do you ever share anything kind of procedurally on laws, or is it very much ad hoc when there's a request for clarification as to how you would implement something that you can then share the knowledge that perhaps your teams have then kind of pre-prepared?
Thank you, Deputy. I think it depends on the law and how complex the change in the law is. If it's a minor amendment to a law, then that will be circulated force-wide. Myself and members of the community policing team meet the centenaires on a monthly basis where we discuss any operational issues, and that could be law change and adoption of law change to make sure we are consistent in the approach. So I'm comfortable with any adoption in law, and certainly minor amendments with animal welfare, they'll be dealt with appropriately and circulated, acknowledged. And I think the key, like the centenaries say, is about, members of the public are very law-abiding, and actually vast majority of incidents are dealt with an education piece rather than an enforcement angle.
Yeah.
And if we do have any questions, we will then refer it to the law department. Excuse me, the law department, and they're very good
You've got good
at
relationship
replying
there.
back to us and saying, no, this is correct, or this is incorrect, and this is the process you should follow. So again, they are very, very helpful.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, before I go on to the question of livestock worrying, for a few points on, just following up on the dogs and one aspect. I'm in a parish where there is a large tract of land on the north coast, good for dog walkers, and they like to let them go free. I've had a number of complaints from people who no longer take their dogs up there because they're frightened by a posse of dogs held by a professional dog walker. Now, there's a code of conduct or code of practice issued by Environment Department, you'll know, which is very good actually, and they talk about walks with only walk dogs they're capable of managing, and walkers must not walk dogs individually as part of a group that could overpower them, a maximum of 5 dogs, and a few things like that. Now, the question I'm asking really is that on the basis that the Honorary Police want to nip problems in the bud, do the Honorary Police feel comfortable in pulling someone up for breach of a code of conduct, having regard to the strict provisions of the actual regulations, which refer only to person assault, indulgent behaviour, there's unreasonable interference, etc. I mean, what I'm saying is, are the present rules up for policing adequate for you to take up a case where professional dog walkers are not acting in accordance with the conduct?
I don't think that the Honorary Police have any issues in going up to the member of the public and having a word. End of the day, we're not talking of enforcement, we're talking of education. And as long as you go up to them in a professional manner and talk to them and tell them what the actual process or what the rules should be, I don't think we've had any problem in the past. Now, I'm quite lucky in St Peter we don't have that many parks, so we don't have that many people walking dogs. But when we have had occasions to speak to people, and if they don't take note of us, as Inspector Jackson said, we have a committee officer who's very good at actually going out and talk to them. Sometimes they feel that an honorary officer doesn't have sufficient power as a States Jersey police officer, and so they dismiss us, which is, okay, that's just the nature of the beast. But when they get then a call from the States Jersey police officer, I think that makes there's a lot more gravitas. But I don't think an officer from the Honorary Police has any issues in just talking to a member of the public and letting them know.
So, what I'm getting at, I mean, the lady, one particular lady who's approached me, I think she hasn't complained enough lately. I mean, if she complains to the parish hall, we would obviously notify the centre, and I like to think that they would speak to the professional dog owner concerned, and a tap on the nose, metaphorically, might do the trick. But I'm just trying to get assurance that the honoraries generally would take the code of conduct as giving them power to do that.
I would say it's 100%, without a doubt. I mean, we have quite a few dog walkers, professional dog walkers in the parish, and we've had occasion to speak to them a few times, and they do take it on board because they know that if they don't, we will then go to States Jersey Police.
That's what I'm getting at. It's trying to solve the problem at a lower level, if I can call it that.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Thanks. On to livestock worrying astray. First question, general one. How often do the police and centennials encounter incidents of livestock straying, and how are these typically reported or identified?
We have goats or long-horned sheep in St Peter's Valley. We have cows all over the place. Then I'd actually say recently it's been a lot quieter than it has been. Of course, livestock are going to get out. That's not a problem. I don't know about other parishes, but in our parish, every single officer has a list of the owners and their phone numbers and their contact, and in some cases they've got actual farm managers. So we would call the manager or the actual owner, and invariably they're there within half an hour. They're very, very good at actually picking up their livestock out on the roads.
And in fairness, even if it's not theirs, very often they'll say, leave with me, I'll sort it for you, and they'll often do that. You know?
So if I have no idea who owns it, I just call Darren Kenno, and he knows everyone, and he'll just let me know who actually owns the livestock in the field.
Just to clarify, with the benefit of the public, if there are some movable flocks, we can call them that, so each parish will be told the flock was on its premises, will it?
Absolutely, and our parish, they send out a list of the owners with their contact details, I'd say once every 3 months. And so we're all aware of numbers and contact numbers.
Okay, and an area as well, because on large tracts, are they...
Well, unfortunately, because, as I said earlier, because farmers do lease out their land to other farmers, we won't necessarily know who the owners are. But as I stated, if I call Darren, if I call Blampignon, they will always let us know who the owners are. So it's quite simple, or quite easy to get hold of the owners. And invariably, you know the farmers yourself, so you can contact them direct.
Okay, and I think you've answered my next two questions.
Sorry.
Sorry?
It's like everything. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yes, I've been phoned on a Saturday morning for that reason, yeah. So the typical response is,
Well,
officers go out and face the owner and get him to put it back.
Well, it depends where they are, but if we're on the road, the non-revenue officers go out, try and corral them away from the road if we can, and either with a couple of cars to prevent them actually going anywhere, and then call a farmer.
I mean, again, are there cases where a centenarian officer will feel unable to do it himself and have to call for assistance from professional people, shall I say?
Was called out once when there was a bull. Now that was interesting, but luckily they came out quite quickly. I mean, it's just part and parcel of what we have to do. So I don't think it's anything that's I know it's easy to say it's water off a duck's back, but it is, because it's quite an often occurrence.
Okay, and you're talking about what's happened now, and do you see any change in the new animal welfare law as you see it? I'm basically concerned about, sort of large animals which are too difficult for the owners to handle themselves. Is the training available or required for them, or would you just not go there? Would you leave it to trained personnel?
I think we'd assess. We'd probably go there and assess. And if we don't think we're capable of doing it, we'd find a man who can.
Or if it's we had a case when 200 of Blanc-Pignon's cattle just went walkabout. There's nothing. We'd have to have every single officer in the island to try and help. We just, as Michelle says, we assess and then we call out help as and when needed.
And following on from that, the law provides removal of animals to a safe place. I mean, in your experience, are you content there are enough safe places around to accommodate them, whatever it might be?
I think so. I've not had an instance where I've not been able to either call them or put the livestock in a safe place.
Have you livestock worrying? Are you?
Sorry, yes, I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, how often do you come out, or do we know how often there are incidents covering the parishes?
I don't. The only issue with livestock worrying is the fact that you get called by either the farmer or a member of the public. They don't know who owned the dog. They don't know who the owner is. By the time you get down there, they may have gone. And then how are you supposed to find out who the owner? They may not even live in the parish. They may just be walking their dog. So it's quite hard. And because you don't know if a law's actually been broken, you can't look under poodle because of GDPR. So you need to actually find out who the person is. And that's quite hard.
I think also the numbers over the last 5 years are relatively low as well. I think over the last 5 years, 17 reported incidents of worrying of livestock have been reported to the Honourable Police or the State of Jersey Police. And as the sentence is alluded to, it's quite a hard investigation, but very low prosecution rates on the back of it. So again, over the 5 years, 17 is an extremely low number, and we don't envisage that increasing with the new legislation.
I mean, on the evidential front, I mean, is that difficult if someone alleges that a dog attacked? It might be a one-off incident. You say the dog owner might say it wasn't his or something like that. I mean, are they difficult to substantiate?
They can be. It depends on the set of circumstances. The owner of the dog may be there, and then they're quite easy to deal with. albeit it may happen overnight, and you know some animals have been killed by a dog, and you come into the scene afterwards. So very limited evidence on the back of that. So each case is dealt with, but like I said, relatively we're fortunate with the island that you know, law-abiding citizens, and the incident numbers are extremely low.
And again, on that, if it's a one-off incident, I can understand that the normal procedure might be to a warning or something like that. I mean, did you take a different view if there is a repeat offence?
It depends. I mean, if it's just worrying, obviously under the law, you know, if a sheep has an abortion or damage to the sheep, that's a different matter. We may just come to parish inquiry and give word of advice, but if it's actually, you know, physical damage, I think that takes over the custody threshold, and not custody, over prosecution threshold, and we would look to then send to the court to deal with it in that instance. In relation to dogs, on the same principle, although every single dog attack where there's a member of the public injured, or a livestock injured, or another dog injured, should by law go to court. In reality, St. Neots will take a pragmatic view if it's just a one-off, a very slight incident. And in some cases, the complainant doesn't want it to go to court. So we would then, on a few occasions, would deal with it by way of words of advice to the parish hall. Not every case necessitates it going to court. If it's a one-off, it's a very, very low bite, and the complainant may not want to go to court.
But if it's been dealt with at parish hall, it's then registered effectively. So if it happens again,
And to return to a point already raised on the parks, and parts 3 and 4 of the police regulations enable dogs to be there other than on a lead. So do you see there's a conflict there, or could that be tightened up in the interests of protecting sheep or livestock?
I mean, everything could always be tightened up, but is it warranted? Is the question. There's got to be a degree of a proportionality. If it's not happening, well, you need to actually reinforce it. I mean, if we had loads of instances of it happening, then yes, but since the paucity of actual evidence to show that's actually happening, I don't think we need to tighten it up.
So what about thought about amending the regulations so that all dogs were had to be kept on lead where there were livestock? Does that sound good?
So, if you've got a dog walker walking, let's say, for instance, on St. Peter's Valley on the actual cycle track, well, that goes past all those longhorn sheep that are right by the Vic in the valley. So, I think it's a hard one because, as I say, in most cases, the owner of the dogs will have the dog under control.
If he has, yes, yeah. But if he doesn't, if the dog goes off and chases, he obviously hasn't got it under control.
Sure, but as we've said, the instance of that happening is actually very low. So I don't think we need to reinforce it. I mean, if it continues and there are a more preponderance of it happening, then potentially, yes, we can then have secondary legislation. But I don't think in the current situation, it doesn't warrant it.
you don't want to find yourself using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. You know, it's,
I'm not advocating. I'm just finding where you are in the scheme of things. And the final question I got, which you already referred to, I mean, is some of the instances we do have as a result of lack of education or lack of knowledge on behalf by the public. I mean, if you've been here for many years, you could be forgiven for not thinking there would be sheep on a particular area of land. There are. So is a question of educating the public that through signage or otherwise that there might be, and their responsibilities are greater than they used to be?
Education is always, to me, the first point of call. So make sure public are aware before you start doing anything more drastic or more draconian. So yes, if we can get it out there in the social media, in the JP, in the Berwick Express, to let people know, I think that should be the first instance before we start putting on use the velvet glove first before we start putting on the gauntlet.
And perhaps more signage?
Absolutely. Signage, but you really need to be told, don't let your dog loose around sheep.
I think the main problem that you've got with dogs.
Sorry?
The main problem that you've got with dogs is the owners. They get a dog and they don't train the dog. So when something does kick off, they shout at the dog who doesn't pay the blinders but are noticed him. And I think that is where the problem starts, but how you solve that.
Yeah, we have raised elsewhere the prospect of there being I would dare say, an idiot's guide to dog ownership, but but I would say that I'm political. Some sort of guide which should be almost issued at the same time as a licence, and they should be following it.
Sure, like a highway code for dog owners.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
That's a bit of a way of putting it. Thank you, Conatard. And
Yeah,
maybe
sure,
over
sure.
to-
So offences, prosecutions and penalties. Sorry, just something just crossed my mind just thinking about this. In terms of St Helier, obviously density of population, small, lots of 1 and 2 bed flats in that. Is there an issue around St Helier in particular as opposed to other parishes, or just as a...
I haven't got the exact data on the splits of the parishes, but anecdotally, I do not believe there is
something in particular.
albeit negating from proportionality of crime, where we know St Helier is a vast majority of us because it's the dense populated parish. I don't think, or from me personally experiencing, that there is one parish that's densely populated for dog activity or animal welfare instances.
That's fine, thank you. Okay, so Chairman, please could you set out how offences under the policing regulations are taken from reporting through to a fine being levied? What's the process?
Well, as I said before, ordinary police do not investigate. If a report of an incident has happened, we will then signpost the complainant to State Jersey Police, and then I'll pass on to Chief Inspector Jackson.
So I think it's easier to explain that sort of dangerously out of control dog legislation and the process there, because it will follow suit, and that's the crime investigation. So first port of call will be an incident comes in, reported to the police. We'd take a witness statement from the injured party. We'd collate the evidence. That may be photographs, depending on what's happened. There may be independent witnesses. There may be CCTV. We'd collate that all together. The individual who's in charge of the dog will be interviewed. They've given opportunity to put across what's happened. Again, review of the evidence will take place. If we believe that the evidential threshold has been met, then we'll make a decision whether it's hit the evidential threshold. Now, then it will go to our Criminal Justice Department, and the recommendation could be that it goes to Parish Hall because it's a first-time offence, relatively low, and then the parish where the offence was taking place would deal with it. Centeneer may deem that it's not appropriate or it's too serious to be dealt with at the Parish Hall. Obviously, we want to deal with everything at the lowest level opportunity, and then if Centeneer can't deal with it in the Parish Hall, then it'll be sent to the Magistrates Court. However, it is important to know that the evidential threshold has to be met for the Parish Hall, irrespective if it's going to Parish Hall or court. That's the same evidential threshold.
Okay, thank you. So I've got in the last 12 months, are you aware of any fines being levied under the policing regulations in regard to animal control and fouling? Are you aware of it?
I have never dealt with animal fouling. Again, that's another hard one, because how do you prove that dog is actually
That's
foul?
a really good point.
They'll say it was that dog, and the owner said, no, it's not mine. As far as I'm aware,
I'm not aware of any
Okay.
prosecution.
I mean, we're hearing about DNA testing.
well, I say DNA test is actually quite expensive, and is it worth
it
doing
for-
DNA for a £60 fine? The answer's going to be no.
From standard proportionality,
Unless
doesn't it,
you've
once
just stood in
again?
it.
Sorry?
Unless you've just stood in it.
Yeah, I'm just looking down here because I think this next one is a similar one, similar style. That I think that's fine. I think I'm just repeating really some of the I think you've already given some good answers here already. Okay, so recommendations for strengthening enforcement. Do you want to
Thank you.
step into that one?
I think
No, sorry. Okay.
yes, no, I think this
Dog
is
Marco sort of wasn't appropriate.
this is.
Line.
I mean, it's been very useful because we're hearing from you that there are some elements that seem to be the right level on the law and in the implementation and being able to do that enforcement. And then there are some elements that we've just heard that's really difficult, even though they are in law, like fouling, it's really difficult to do. And other elements, like we talked about livestock worrying, we hear about that there are big concerns, but we don't see see the numbers of reported, but whether that happens or not, we don't know. And they're usually in areas where you don't have witnesses, unfortunately, because that's the nature of where those livestock are. But really, it would be good to hear as a last question, really, from our side is, do you have any recommendations for strengthening enforcement? Is there? Do you feel that what's there is suitable to be able to do? Or do we need more? I mean, we've talked about public awareness as being one of the biggest. That education will help that ensure that there is not having the fences in the first place. But do you see that there is something that could be done further under that strengthening of enforcement?
The only thing I would say is, so at Parish Hall, we cannot compel a defendant to pay compensation. So if a dog has killed 30 chickens and we make a decision, Parish Hall is called deferred decision, so he puts it off for a month, 3 months, 6 months, and in that time, as long as they have paid the compensation, then that's the end of the matter and they get written caution. But if they don't, it goes to court. Now, as Measure said, that is quite a hammer and a nut. I would like the power at Parish Hall to compel a defendant to pay compensation, a reasonable compensation to a defendant if if fowl have been killed, because otherwise it would be a normal case of just dealing with Parish Hall. But if it don't pay, we'll have to send it straight to court. There's no middle ground. There's no middle ground, and that is, as you say, a big jump. It is a big step. So that's the only thing I would say. Okay, thank you. That's interesting. You have something, Michelle?
No, I can't think of anything else.
And yourself?
No, thank you.
I think
we're good.
Are we happy with the beach situation, or are we going to learn?
You can ask a question about that. I mean, for us, that is obviously, of course, something that keeps coming up as well. And the Minister for Economic Development wrote to the panel to say that he had presented to the Comité some suggestions, but and we're obviously going to investigate further around that. But really, at the moment, in the current law, I mean, we're hearing. That there are concerns about that there's not the necessary enforcement when beaches are not close to dogs, but when they have to be on leads, and that this doesn't necessarily happen. And of course, that impacts other people that are concerned about that. And how
I can understand that, but then you're asking honorary police to be deployed to beaches when nothing may be happening for hours on end, when they could be better deployed on speed checks or something else. And again, as I said before, you get a call, you get down there, and they've gone. And there's no way of actually identifying who that person is unless the complainant knows who that party. So once again, it's evidential, and if we don't know the evidence, there's nothing we can do.
Yes, apart from the policing, I mean, are you generally happy with the regulations about in the summer dogs have to be off?
Yeah, I mean, potentially maybe. So I think at the moment, is it from April till
1st May to 30th September.
May, September. So maybe just during these summer holidays when the children are out of school. But apart from that, I don't really have any issues. The only thing, I know there's been talked about maybe having dog-friendly beaches, so a year-round where dogs can go without leads. I'm not a dog owner, so I don't have an opinion, but it's something that may be explored. Because what I would think is if public have a beach or beaches where dogs are able to go without a lead, they're less likely to go to beaches where you need a lead. So you'll be able to contain all those instances in certain beaches that may be better, that could be potentially better policed.
I mean, it's an annual question, or more than an annual question to constables face. And we've sort of so far said we're happy with the status quo, or the status quo is a reasonable compromise, but people have different views, I know.
I personally have a totally different view. I would like to see certain beaches with no dogs at all. I'm terribly selfish here, St Brillard's Bay, for instance. I think it's a jewel in the island's crown. And you do get problems through dogs fouling and the like. And I think you could do with having beaches, as my colleague alluded to, with where dogs can go on off the lead and all that, and other beaches where dogs aren't allowed.
I can see the point about dog exclusion zones, but there again, you might put in the onus on other beaches which are overused and people complain then. Anyway.
As long as they're not St Brillard's, I don't mind.
Well, we can see that is always is definitely one area that will continue, and I'm sure the Connotabs will continue to discuss it year on year.
I'm sure.
Until there is actually a compromise found. But conscious of your time, thank you so much for coming to see us and talking through these things. And of course, we're still in the middle of our review, so if there's anything you think of after this time, please do contact us so that we can put that within our evidence. But I'd like to thank you all for coming.
Thank you.